The friendship was a perfect mask, hiding the truth of an entire empire built on a lie. $1 billion lie. I knew the secret, but I didn't know the cost until she looked me in the eye and chose the money over my family. Clara, that's me. And Chloe, she was my whole world since kindergarten. We were the kind of friends who knew each other's worst fears and best dreams. The kind who promised they'd build an empire right there on the cracked sidewalk outside her childhood home. We grew up in Boston, ordinary lives, big, impossible dreams. Chloe was always the ambitious one, the dreamer. I was the meticulous one, the analyst, the one who checked the math. When Chloe's father passed, 3 years ago, he left her a small, boutique software firm called Apex Solutions. It was small, maybe worth $1 million if they were having a great year. But Chloe, she was driven by a silence, a desperate energy I'd never seen before. In 18 months, Apex Solutions was everywhere. On the news, in Forbes. She transformed that little office into a futuristic glass tower in downtown Manhattan. The valuation, $1.2 billion. It was incredible, surreal, my best friend, a CEO, a titan of tech. I was so proud. I really was. I was living in a small Brooklyn apartment, working freelance as a data analyst, scraping by, but I cheered for her every single time I saw her face on a magazine cover. But the success, it changed her, and not in the way success usually does. It wasn't arrogance, it was something colder, something much more rigid. The red flags, they started small, tiny threads, pulling at the tapestry of our friendship. When we went out, she'd have 3 different phones, and she'd check the encrypted messages, constantly. If I walked near her office desk, she'd slam her laptop shut, like I was a government spy. She bought a ridiculously expensive loft, with a huge safe, built right into the marble wall. When I jokingly asked what she kept in there, she just looked at me with this flat expression and said, "Taxes, Clara, just sensitive tax documents." But taxes, they don't make your eyes dart around the room every time an auditor is mentioned. "Chloe," I asked one night, after she nervously ended a call, "what exactly does Apex do? I mean, what is the billion-dollar product?" She poured herself a 3rd glass of Pinot, avoiding my gaze. "It's proprietary, Clara. It's an AI solution for ultra-high net worth clients. Financial modeling, risk assessment." "But what does it look like?" I pressed. "What's the actual code? You used to show me every line of code your father wrote." She just smiled, a practiced, corporate smile that never reached her eyes. "It's evolved, baby. It's too complex now, too many NDAs. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was. I knew numbers. I knew data, and the numbers I saw didn't add up to the vague story she was selling the world. My own career was finally gaining traction. I landed a freelance investigative assignment, my dream job, a deep dive into successful young CEOs. Chloe, she was the perfect subject. The center of my report. I flew to New York, ready to interview her, ready to spend a week documenting her success. But when I presented my proposal, her reaction was visceral. She practically hissed at me, in the middle of a crowded restaurant. "No, Clara. Absolutely not. You cannot, you will not, touch Apex Solutions. Chloe, this is my chance. It's the biggest story of my career. It's your story. Why are you hiding it?" "I'm protecting it," she whispered back, her voice tight with panic. "You don't understand the kind of pressure, the kind of people involved in this space. Your deep dive could ruin everything, for everyone." The language, the terror in her eyes, it wasn't the fear of an honest CEO protecting trade secrets. It was the fear of a criminal protecting a vast, fragile cover story. I reluctantly backed down, the silence between us thick with accusation. But the seed of doubt she had warned me about, it had already sprouted. That week, while I was packing up, I found a scrap of paper, crumpled in the wastebasket, next to her office guest bed. Just a few lines of data, numbers that looked like currency exchanges, and a 3-letter acronym I had seen before, in public financial fraud cases. I ran the numbers, through a simple analysis tool, my own little program. They were too clean, too structured, a signature of digital manipulation. I tried to tell myself, it was coincidence. That I was jealous, or paranoid. That my best friend, the girl who helped me sneak out of my window, in high school, couldn't possibly be building her empire on something rotten. I told myself that, right up until the phone call about my mother. The call was from my father. My mother's condition, her rare kidney issue, it had accelerated. We needed a specialized surgery, immediately. The cost, it was astronomical. More than my family had ever dreamed of saving. I was desperate. I was ashamed, but I was desperate. I had to call Chloe. My billionaire best friend, the woman who bought a sports car, the way I buy coffee. I flew back to New York. I didn't even ask to meet at her fancy office. I met her in a quiet park, near the river. The city noise seemed to mock my small, agonizing problem. Chloe, please, I begged, my voice thick with tears. It's $25,000. I know it's a lot, but you're a billionaire. It's less than your monthly car payment. It would be a loan. I'd work 7 jobs. I'd pay you back. She looked uncomfortable. Not angry, just profoundly inconvenienced. She shifted her weight on the wooden bench. Clara. I can't. I stared at her. You can't? Or you won't? I can't, she insisted, running a manicured hand through her perfect blonde hair. I told you. I have liquidity issues. Everything is tied up in assets and proprietary holdings. If I move that kind of capital, right now, it flags too many things. The optics are terrible. Optics. She was worried about optics, while my mother was running out of time. You're a liar, I whispered, the word tasting like ash. You just bought a vintage watch, for $30,000. You said so yourself, last week. She didn't flinch. That was a personal asset. Clara. I can't compromise Apex for a personal loan. I have $1 billion worth of responsibility and clients. What about 20 years of friendship? I shouted, the composure finally shattering. What about the woman who drove you to the ER that night you thought you were dying? I'm asking for a lifeline, and you're giving me a corporate excuse. She stood up. Tall, cold, utterly detached. I'm sorry, Clara. I wish I could help, but this is business. You know that. She walked away, leaving me sobbing, on a park bench, my best friend, the one person who could easily have saved my mother's life, just choosing not to. The grief, the rage, it fused with the suspicion. I had been holding back. Now, there was nothing left to protect. Not the friendship, not my loyalty. Only my mother's chance at survival. I went home, and I stopped crying. I started working. I pulled every public record I could find on Apex Solutions. I started with that scrap of paper, the currency exchanges, the acronyms. I spent 48 hours, drinking terrible coffee, and diving deep into the world of complex global finance. My data analysis skills, they weren't just a hobby, they were a weapon. Twist 1, the $1 billion secret wasn't some revolutionary AI model. Chloe was right, it was proprietary, but not in the way she claimed. It was an ingenious shell corporation infrastructure, designed by her late father, and perfected by Chloe. The algorithm was just the sophisticated ledger that tracked the origin, the movement, and the destination of incredibly large amounts of dirty, untraceable money. Apex Solutions wasn't a tech company. It was the world's most advanced digital laundromat. The clients, They weren't just ultra-high net worth individuals, they were international criminals, tax evaders, powerful, dangerous figures, who needed their illicit fortunes washed clean into legitimate assets, like real estate and shell corporations. Chloe's billion-dollar valuation was simply the sheer volume of criminal capital flowing through her company. Twist 2. I looked at the old records, the bank transfers from years ago, the money Chloe had loaned me to pay for my college tuition, the money I had always felt guilty about. It wasn't a personal loan. It wasn't clean inheritance money. It was a single, small transaction, accidentally cleared by the Apex algorithm, a tiny bit of dirty money that had momentarily passed through my account, a statistical anomaly that made me an unknowing accomplice, a potential target. She didn't refuse my mother the $25,000 because of optics. She refused because she was terrified that any major, traceable transaction to an old contact would bring the entire, rotten, criminal empire crashing down on her and anyone she ever loved. She wasn't protecting her company. She was protecting her prison, and she locked me outside of it. The betrayal was complete, absolute. It wasn't just a friend, it was a predator, hiding in plain sight. I stopped seeing Chloe. I stopped seeing my friend. I only saw the CEO, the criminal, the woman who had sealed my mother's fate. The emotion was gone, replaced by a singular, sharp clarity. Revenge wasn't about drama. It was about exposing the truth. It was about justice, using the one thing I was better at than she was. Data. I knew I couldn't go to the press. The story was too big, too dangerous. The paper trail was too convoluted. A simple journalist would get buried, or worse. The men who ran this money, they were ruthless. I needed to target the Achilles heel. Apex Solutions was valued at $1 billion because of one thing, a massive, unsecured credit line provided by a prestigious, publicly traded investment bank. Sterling Capital. Sterling Capital, they were the key. They gave Chloe the legitimacy. They vouched for her algorithm. They were either deeply negligent or complicit. I spent 3 more days assembling the evidence. Not an article, not a tweet, but a 50-page, bulletproof dossier. Every shell company, every wire transfer, every foreign exchange anomaly, a meticulously sourced paper trail, leading directly to Sterling Capital's door, proving they had failed their due diligence, and were now backing an organized crime operation. This isn't about spite, I told myself, as I printed the final page. This is about consequence. I didn't leak it publicly. That would only create chaos and allow Chloe to run. I needed the system to turn on itself. I addressed the package to the head of legal compliance at Sterling Capital and another, identical copy, to the director of enforcement at the Securities and Exchange Commission. The SEC. I used a public library 5 miles away. I paid cash for the express shipping, no witnesses, no digital footprint. I was a ghost, delivering a bomb. I waited. For 4 days. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just watched the stock ticker for Sterling Capital. Nothing. Silence. Had it failed? Had they buried it? On the 5th day, the news alerts started trickling in. Not about Apex Solutions, but about Sterling Capital. Breaking: Sterling Capital CEO resigns amid regulatory probe. Sterling Capital stock plummets 30% on unspecified liquidity concerns. The SEC, they worked fast, and they worked silently. The internal investigation at Sterling Capital had found my dossier, and the bank's executives, realizing the criminal liability they were facing, had cut all ties to Apex and launched their own panic-fueled internal purge. Chloe's billion-dollar empire was nothing but a house of cards built on paper loans. When the bank pulled the unsecured credit, the whole thing collapsed in under 24 hours. The next morning, I saw the images on every news channel. The FBI the SEC, the uniformed police, surrounding Chloe's glass tower. They had secured the building. And then I saw her. Chloe, my best friend, being escorted out, in handcuffs. Her perfectly tailored suit was wrinkled, her perfect hair was disheveled. Her face was pale, but more than that, it was blank. The expression of someone who realized they had finally been caught and exposed. It was over. Later that night, a call came in. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something told me to. Clara? Her voice was raw, desperate, tiny. Clara, where are you? You have to help me. They took everything. You're the only one who knows the system, you have to find my hidden accounts. I took a deep breath, the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears. I know the system, Chloe, I said, my voice soft but firm. I'm the one who shut it down. I waited just long enough for the realization to sink in on the other end of the line. Then I hung up. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't public screaming. It was the meticulous, calculated application of consequence. I used the evidence I collected to publish my first major, self-sourced piece on the ethics of due diligence in financial tech. It wasn't about Chloe, it was about the system. The report went viral, and I was immediately hired as a full-time investigative financial journalist. The first thing I did, with my new salary, was pay for my mother's specialized care. I didn't just get justice. I didn't just get revenge. I got my own life back, one that was finally built on truth and integrity. This is a powerful lesson in choosing what you value. Was I wrong to betray my friend? Or was I right to expose a billion-dollar betrayal that threatened my entire family? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories of shocking revenge and unbelievable justice.